First in the spotlight tonight is Nick Smith, a publisher from Abingdon. He'll be answering questions on the writer and biographer Thomas Jefferson Hogg. Next, David Buck, a taxi driver from Haverfordwest. He answers questions on the 1960s radical agitators, the Diggers. Paul Jenkins, a writer from Penarth. His subject, the American author Raymond Carver. And Alan Clark, an electrician from Lincoln. His subject, Luton Town Football Club from 1965 to the present day. Hello and welcome to Mastermind with me, John Humphreys. Four more contenders are about to take television's ultimate test of nerve and knowledge. In the famous black chair, they will answer 2 minutes of questions on their specialist subject and then 2.5 minutes on general knowledge. The winner goes through to the semi-final and takes a step closer to owning the Great Glass Bowl. But the real prize, of course, is the honour of becoming the nation's mastermind. So let's get on with it and ask our first contender to join us, please. And your name is?
Nick Smith.
Your occupation?
I'm a publisher.
And your chosen subject?
The life and works of Thomas Jefferson Hogg.
Thomas Jefferson Hogg. 2 minutes starting now. Which Oxford college did Hogg attend as a contemporary of Percy Bysshe Shelley in 1810?
University College.
Yes, Hogg wrote love letters to Shelley's sister without having actually met her on the grounds that she was said to be a feminine version of Shelley himself. What was her name?
Elizabeth.
Yes. Which literary character speaks the opening sentence of his fictional memoirs of Prince Alexei Heimatov, comparing life to a game of chess?
Sancho Panza.
Yes. What position for Northumberland and Berwick on the Northern Legal Circuit did Hogg hold from 1838 onwards?
Revising barrister.
Yes. In a letter, Shelley described Hogg as a pearl within an oyster shell, one of the richest of the deep. Who was the letter to?
Maria Gisborne.
Yes. To which prominent Whig politician and lawyer did Hogg dedicate his travel volumes entitled 209 Days?
Henry Broome.
Yes, according to the life of Shelley, whom does a Yorkshireman regard as a simpleton and a poor fool and hold in a profound contempt, though Hogg concedes that the feeling is mutual?
Lancastrian.
Yeah, which member of his intellectual circle owned a cottage at the Vale of Health in Hampstead, at which Hogg was a frequent visitor after 1817?
Leigh Hunt.
Correct. What did he describe as more beautiful than anything except my sweet Jane and her Dinah in a letter from Switzerland to Jane Williams?
Mont Blanc.
Lake Lucerne. In which periodical was his Reminiscences of Shelley at Oxford first published in 1832?
The New Monthly Magazine.
Yes, Hogg was promised which chair at the new University of London in 1829, although the offer was withdrawn 2 years later because student numbers had been overestimated.
The Chair of Civil Law.
Yes, which word in Alexei Heimatov was coined by Hogg and subsequently used by Thomas Love Peacock in Nightmare Abbey?
The Eleutherarchs.
Yes, according to his biography of Shelley, the poet's political creed was above all things, what?
Liberation.
No, liberty. Hogg acknowledges Shelley's greatness as poet, philosopher, moralist and scholar, but claims that he was the most conspicuously great in which particular excellence?
As a ladies' man.
Yes. How many Grecian damsels dancing a slow and solemn dance by moonlight does Heimatov view from the Parthenon in Athens?
10.
10 is correct. No passes. Nick Smith, you have 13 points. And our next contender, please. And your name is?
David Buck.
Your occupation?
Taxi driver.
And your specialist subject?
The Diggers.
The Diggers. 2 minutes starting now. In the mid-1960s, the Diggers were radical exponents of the free distribution of food and other resources. In which American city did they emerge?
San Francisco.
Yes. What name did the Diggers give to the large wooden square through which anyone receiving free food from them was required to pass?
Free frame of reference.
Yes. In September '66, the Diggers were among several radical groups that defied a curfew imposed following riots sparked by the killing of which young man by a San Francisco police officer?
Matthew Peanut Johnson.
Yes. The New Year's wail held on the 1st of January '67 was sponsored by the Diggers and which other group?
Hell's Angels.
Yes, the poet and author of All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace had 2,500 printed copies of his poems distributed for free in San Francisco in 1968. What was his name?
Richard Brautigan.
Correct. According to the Digger archives, in March '67, John Stephen Simons was arrested for the illegal possession of what type of meat?
Beef.
Venison.
Beef.
What name did the digger Peter Cohn adopt following a hallucinogenic experience under the influence of the drug peyote?
Peter Coyote.
Correct. The Digger Parade of '66, entitled The Rebirth of the Hate, was also known as the death of what?
Hippie.
Money. Which iconic film purporting to portray America's 60s counterculture was dismissed by Peter Coyote, who described parts of it as inaccurate, smug and insulting?
Head.
Easy Rider. Which '78 album did Bob Dylan dedicate to the memory of Emmett Grogan?
Street Legal.
Correct. Leaflets advertising the Diggers' first free food event at the Panhandle ended with the slogan, "It's free because it's what?"
Yours.
Yes. What was the name of the doctor who founded the Digger-inspired Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic?
David Smith.
Correct. Which key member of the Diggers was the partner of fellow digger Judy Goldhaft and established the free store Trip Without a Ticket?
Peter Berg.
Yes. Which building on the edge of the Tenderloin district of San Francisco hosted several digger events, including the Invisible Circus in February '67?
The Glide Church.
Yes, according to the archive, which columnist on youth culture gave the Diggers their first mention in the San Francisco Chronicle in November '66?
Ralph Gleason.
It was. What was the title of the volume of poetry by Lenora Candell that triggered a well-publicised obscenity trial in November 1966?
The Book of Love.
No, The Love Book. You have no passes. David Buck, you have 12 points. And our next contender, please. And your name is?
Paul Jenkins,
Your occupation?
writer.
And your specialist subject?
The life and short stories of Raymond Carver.
In 2 minutes, starting now. In which Oregon town was Carver born in 1938, 3 years before the family moved to Washington State?
Clatts Caney.
Yes, what's the title of Carver's first major collection of stories? When they were published in 1976, they established his reputation for unflinching portraits of America's working-class poor.
Will you please be quiet, please?
Yes, which story concludes with Myrna saying, "Wash your hands," after the narrator has said, "Let's hug a while and then you fix us a real nice supper"?
Pass.
The death of which writer, to whom Carver has often been compared, is the subject of the story Errand?
Chekhov.
Yes. What is Mel McGuinness's medical specialism in the story What We Talk About When We Talk About Love?
Cardiologist.
Yes. Which college magazine was responsible for the first appearance in print of a short story by Carver when The Furious Seasons appeared in its winter 1960-61 issue?
Selection.
Yes. Carver dedicated his 1983 collection Cathedral to which writer and teacher who died in a motorcycle accident the previous year?
Pass.
In the story The Third Thing That Killed My Father Off, the third thing is the death of Dummy. The second thing was moving to his father's farm. What was the first thing?
Pearl Harbor.
Yes, on the 2nd of June of which year did Carver permanently give up drinking after many years of alcoholism?
1977.
Correct. Carver married which poet in Reno, Nevada in June 1988?
Tess Gallagher.
Yes, what was the name of the editor at Esquire magazine who published Carver's story Neighbours in '71 and went on to have a major influence on his career?
Gordon Lish.
Yes, what's the name of Earl Ober's wife in the story They're Not Your Husband?
Doreen.
Yes, what was the name of the alcoholism treatment centre in Calistoga that Carver attended in '76 that inspired his short story Where I'm Calling From?
Duffy's.
Yes, which acclaimed writer visited Carver in Port Angeles in 1984 and translated a number of his stories into Japanese?
Murakami.
Yes. In which story do a married couple named Nancy and Dan encounter white horses grazing in the front yard of their rented summer house?
Pass.
To which city is Myers intended to travel in order to visit his son, who is at university there, in the short story The Compartment?
New York.
Strasbourg. And we are out of time. You have 3 passes. Call If You Need Me was the story in which the married couple encountered white horses grazing in the front yard of their house. John Gardner was the writer to whom Carver dedicated his 1983 collection Cathedral, and that story concluding with Myrna saying "Wash your hands" was Mr. Coffee and Mr. Fix-It. You have, Paul Jenkins, 12 points. And our final contender, please. And your name is?
Alan Clark.
Your occupation?
Electrician.
And your specialist subject?
Luton Town Football Club, 1965 to the present day.
Luton Town, 2 minutes starting now. In 1988, Luton Town won which trophy by defeating Arsenal 3-2 at Wembley?
Littlewoods Cup.
Yes, which team lost to Luton in FA Cup third-round replay on the club's plastic pitch in January '87?
Liverpool.
Yes, which manager introduced a new playing formation in the 72-73 season that involved a lone striker and 5 floating midfield players?
Harry Haslam.
Yes, Luton missed out on a return to the Football League after losing to which team in May 2011 in the conference playoff final?
AFC Wimbledon.
Yes, in 1972, Luton signed which member of Manchester United's 68 European Cup winning team?
John Aston.
Yes, the collapse of which insurance company in 71 created a financial crisis for Luton as the company's shares had underpinned the debts of the football club?
Vehicle and General.
Correct. In Luton's last match in the old First Division, they lost to which team and missed out on a place in the new Premier League, which began the following season?
Notts County.
Yes, in 69, Luton signed the future England striker Malcolm MacDonald from which club?
Fulham.
Yes, who was the chairman of Luton when they introduced a controversial membership scheme that banned away supporters from attending matches at Kenilworth Road?
David Evans.
He was when Luton became champions of League One in the 2004-05 season. How many league victories did they achieve?
27.
29. What is the surname of the twin brothers who both signed for Luton from Chester City and then both went on to play for Manchester City?
Futcher.
Yes, in late 66, Luton lost to Lincoln City, who were then the bottom club in the Football League. What was the score?
8-1.
It was. Which town's development corporation rejected Luton's plan to relocate there in 85?
Milton Keynes.
Yes, in 97, which teenage Luton player was signed by Arsenal for an initial fee of £1 million, in spite of having only made one league appearance for the club?
Matthew Upson.
Yes, what nationality was Danny Bergara, who joined Luton's coaching staff in the mid-70s?
Uruguayan.
He was between them. How many points did the Football Association and the Football League deduct from Luton at the start of the 2008-09 season?
30.
Yes, what's the name of the Luton-born England international who signed for the club? I'll finish the question from Southampton and played in an FA Cup semi-final against one of his former teams.
Steve Williams.
No, it was Kerry Dixon. No passes. Alan Clark, you have 15 points. Well, a close, high-scoring round there. Let's have a look at all of the scores. In joint third place, 12 points apiece, David Buck and Paul Jenkins. Second place, 13 points, Nick Smith. In the lead, 15 points, Alan Clark. The general knowledge round now, and if there's a tie at the end of it, well, then the number of passes is taken into account, and whoever has the fewer passes is the winner. And if they're tied on passes as well, then there'll be a tie break. The 6 higher scoring runners-up will also claim a place in the semi-finals. So let's get on with it and ask David Buck to join us again, please. And you begin with your 12 points. Your knowledge of the Diggers. Let's see how you do with your general knowledge. 2.5 minutes starting now. Which group's first chart-topping UK single was Good Vibrations in November 1966?
Beach Boys.
Yes, what term for a puppet worked by strings is derived from the French name Marie?
Marionette.
Yes, which specialised agency of the United Nations established in 1948 is known by the initials WHO?
World Health Organization.
Correct. Whose first successful play was The Glass Menagerie, about a southern family living in a tenement?
Tennessee Williams.
Yes, which very small variety of lettuce shares its name with a character in an old folk tale?
Radicchio.
Tom Thumb. In 1998, Donna Simmons, a lawyer from Barbados, became the first woman to be a commentator on which radio sports programme?
5 Live.
Test Match Special. In 1535, who completed the first translation of the Bible to be printed in English and edited it for what became known as the Great Bible of 1539?
Wycliffe.
That was Miles Coverdale. Which small parrot has a ring-necked species that has become naturalised to Britain and is now officially a pest?
Pass.
Which Hollywood film production company was set up in '94 by Steven Spielberg, Jeffrey Katzenberg and David Geffen?
Amblin Entertainment.
DreamWorks. The Manchester United footballer Luis Carlos Almeida de Cahuna is better known by what name?
Pass.
Which 18th century composer's work include those known as Jesu, joy of man's desiring, and sheep may safely graze?
Handel.
Bach. Which river rises in the Pennines and flows for about 70 miles, passing through Sheffield before joining the Ouse at Goole?
Pass.
What painful condition of the toe is known as onychocryptosis?
Corns.
Ingrown toenail. In 1994, the Globe Theatre on Shaftesbury Avenue in London was renamed in honour of which actor?
Wanamaker.
Gielgud. According to tradition, which of the 3 wise men from the East brought the gift of gold as a sign of kingship to the infant Jesus?
Pass.
In which Shakespeare play has the title character's daughter Imogen secretly married posthumous Leonatus?
Pass.
Which British archaeologist excavated the Bronze Age city of Knossos on Crete?
Pass.
In 2005, the Culture Secretary Tessa Jowell was given ministerial responsibility for what event?
London Olympics.
Correct. Which portrait and landscape painter was born in Suffolk in 1727, moved to Bath in the late 1750s, where he became a friend of the actor David Garrick, whom he frequently painted?
Reynolds.
Gainsborough. Which desert has a name meaning waterless place in Mongolian?
Gobi.
The Gobi Desert is correct. You have 6 passes. The British archaeologist who excavated the Bronze Age city of Knossos was Arthur Evans. Cymbeline was that Shakespeare play. Melchior was the wise man who brought gold. The River Don flows through Sheffield and joins the Ouse at Goole. That footballer with the otherwise unpronounceable name is known as Nani. And the parrot that's become a bit of a pest is a parakeet. You have a total now, David Buck, of 18 points. And now Paul Jenkins again, please. And you also begin this round with 12 points with your knowledge of Raymond Carver. Let's try you out with your general knowledge. Here we go. Which scarecrow had a collection of interchangeable heads was portrayed on television by John Pertwee?
Words or gummidge?
Yes. Which large wild bovine with a shaggy mane is popularly called a buffalo in North America?
Bison.
Yes. In rugby union, what's the name of the overseas touring team made up of players from the 4 home nations?
Barbarians.
No, the Lions. Which 1965 film starring the Beatles has a one-word title?
Help.
Yes, on the 20th of April 1949, which Royal Navy vessel on the River Yangtze sent the signal under heavy fire, am aground, large number of casualties?
Pass.
What name for the smallest unit of a chemical element that can exist comes from the Greek for indivisible?
Atom.
Yes. Which statue by Rodin commemorates Eustache de Saint-Pierre and 5 of his fellow citizens?
Pass.
Which writer's last novel, The Biographer's Moustache, published in 1995, tells how a struggling hack is commissioned to write the biography of Jimmy Fain?
Kingsley Amis.
Correct. Who, with Ricky Gervais, wrote the television series The Office, Extras and Life's Too Short?
Stephen Merchant.
Yes. Which tributary of the Mississippi is known as the Big Muddy because of the amount of silt it carries?
Missouri.
Yes. Which saint, known for his missionary work in Northumbria, died on the Farne Islands in 687? His remains are now buried in Durham Cathedral.
Bede.
Cuthbert. In the House of Commons, it's been customary for MPs to address those who have served in the armed forces as honourable and what other epithet?
Proud.
Gallant. The hero of which of Walter Scott's novels, his first set in England, joins Richard I on a crusade?
Ivanhoe.
Yes. Which radio and television presenter is the daughter of a former Leeds United and Wales footballer?
Gabby Logan.
Correct. In Indian cuisine, what's the characteristic feature of the meat in a dish described as keema?
Pass.
Which animal was unknown in the West until 1869 when the French missionary Armand David obtained some furs?
Rabbit.
Panda. In musical notation, which note, also called the whole note, has double the value of the minim?
G.
Semibreve. What nickname did the Confederate General Thomas Jonathan Jackson acquire after his stand at the First Battle of Bull Run in the American Civil War?
Stonewall.
Yes. Which town on the island of Lewis and Harris is the largest town in the Outer Hebrides?
Stornoway.
Yes. Donald Fagen and Walter Becker are the core members of which rock band?
Steely Dan.
Yes. What was the name of the Pullman train service that ran between London Victoria and Paris from 1929 to 72?
The Orient Express.
The Golden Arrow. Which vegetable has varieties including Ailsa Craig, Bedfordshire Champion and Express Yellow?
Carrot.
No, it's the onion. Your time's up. You had 3 passes. If you have a dish called keema, it consists of minced or ground meat. The statue by Rodin commemorates the burghers of Calais, and the Royal Navy ship that ran aground and came under heavy fire was HMS Amethyst. You have, Paul Jenkins, a total of 24 points. And now Nick Smith again, please. And you start out with 13 points, and 24 is, as we speak, the score to beat. Let's see if you can do it with your general knowledge. Which Scottish song is traditionally sung at midnight on New Year's Eve in English-speaking countries?
Old Lang Syne.
Yes. In which ballet with music by Tchaikovsky has Odette been turned into a bird by the magician Rothbard?
The Nutcracker Suite.
Swan Lake, the region around Palo Alto on San Francisco Bay, is known by what name because of the concentration of electronics and computer companies there?
Silicon Valley.
Yes, in the 1980s, the government tried to prevent the publication of which book by the former assistant director of MI5, Peter Wright?
Pass.
At which battle of December 1805 did Napoleon defeat a combined Russian and Austrian army, forcing Austria to make peace with France?
Austerlitz.
Yes. What name, meaning velvety, is given to a basic white sauce made from stock and a flour and butter roux?
Béarnaise.
Veloute. Which 1978 #1 single for the band Boney M is a version of Psalm 137?
Pass.
What term for a sensational or lurid style of American novel comes from the cheaply produced paper on which it was originally published?
Yellowback.
Pulp fiction. Which Middlesex and England cricketer played for his native Ireland in the 2007 World Cup?
Morgan.
Yes. Which pre-Raphaelite artist painted the scapegoat while he was in the Middle East in 1854?
Burne-Jones.
Holman Hunt. Sir Gus O'Donnell was appointed to what post in 2005? It also incorporates the role of head of the Home Civil Service.
Pass.
Which bright red pigment consisting of mercuric sulfide is obtained from the ore cinnabar or made artificially?
Pass.
The works of which Canadian director, especially noted for his horror films, include The Fly and Crash?
Cronenberg.
Yes. What is the title of the last novel Jane Austen worked on? It was unfinished at the time of her death in 1817.
Sanditon.
Correct. Port Harcourt is one of the leading industrial centres in which African country?
Nigeria.
It is. Which spring-flowering shrubs grown for their yellow flowers are named after an 18th century British botanist?
Pass.
What does the acronym WASP stand for when used to denote the group considered to be the most privileged class in American society?
White Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Yes, The Troubled Man, published in 2011, is the last novel featuring which Swedish police inspector?
Wallander.
Yes, from what trade did St. Paul earn his living before he was called to be an apostle?
A farmer.
Tent maker. Which former newspaper journalist became the BBC's business editor in February 2006?
Peston.
And Robert Peston is correct. You had 5 passes. Forsythia is that spring-flowering shrub with the yellow flowers. Vermilion is the bright red pigment. Gus O'Donnell is not only head of the Home Civil Service, but he's also Cabinet Secretary. The Rivers of Babylon was the Boney M hit. And Peter Wright, Assistant Director of MI5, wrote Spycatcher. You have, Nick Smith, a total of 23 points. And finally, Alan Clark, please. And you start out with 15 points, and 24 is still the score to beat. Let's see if you can do it to get into the semi-finals. Here we go. Which singer who died on a golf course in 1977 was affectionately known as the Old Groaner?
Bing Crosby.
Yes. Which cow's milk cheese, named after the Swiss Valley where it was first made, is similar to Gruyere but has larger holes?
Emmental.
Yes. Which brothers were among the founder members of the group Oasis?
Gallagher.
Yeah. In what event did Tessa Sanderson and Fatima Whitbread win Olympic medals during the 1980s?
Javelin.
Yes. Which breed of dog is named after a town in southwestern Germany where it was bred as a cattle drover's dog and a guard dog?
Rottweiler.
Yes. Who played the part of the police detective Virgil Tibbs in the 1967 film In the Heat of the Night?
Gene Hackman.
Sidney Poitier. In Christian art, what term is used for a depiction of the Virgin Mary, often with the infant Jesus?
P. Jesu.
Madonna. Which orchestral work by Debussy consists of 3 symphonic sketches, the second of which is called Jeu de Vague, or Play of the Waves?
Pass.
San Jose is the capital of which Central American republic?
Costa Rica.
Yes, in a reference to Sarah Palin, what did Barack Obama say you could put on a pig, but it would still remain a pig?
Lipstick.
Yes. Which award-winning television series was broadcast in 5 episodes? Jobs for the Boys, Moonlighter, Shop Thy Neighbour, Yossa's Story and George's Last Ride?
Boys from the Backstop.
Yes. Which astronomer discovered 4 moons of Saturn and also the gap in its ring system that's been named after him?
Herschel.
Cassini. What name is shared by an island off the coast of Northumberland and an island off the west coast of Anglesey?
Pass.
Queen Victoria's eldest daughter, Princess Victoria, was the mother of which European ruler?
Prince Rainier.
Wilhelm II. Which British-born director achieved his first commercial success with the film Alien, followed by Blade Runner?
Ridley Scott.
Yes, what was the unit of currency in the Netherlands before the introduction of the euro?
Gilder.
Yes, which creationist theory, directly opposed to Darwinism, proposes that living organisms were made more or less in their present form by a thinking being, usually identified as God?
Pass.
In 1987, which soul singer was the first woman to be admitted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Aretha Franklin.
Yes, in 1969, who became the first person to sail solo non-stop around the world in his boat Saheli?
Francis Chichester.
Robin Knox Johnson. Which nymph detained Odysseus for 7 years on his way home from the Trojan War, but could not make him overcome his longing for home in spite of a promise of immortality?
Persephone.
Calypso. What is the title of Winston Churchill's only novel, published in 1900?
Pass.
The name of which North American sport comes from the shape of the instrument used to throw the ball. It resembles a bishop's crozier.
Lacrosse.
Is correct. You had 4 passes. Savrola was the title of Churchill's one and only novel. That creationist theory, which opposes Darwinism, is intelligent design. The name of the island off the coast of Northumberland and the west coast of Anglesey, Holy Island, and the orchestral work by Debussy was La Mer, or the sea. But you have, Alan Clark, 27 points. So, a pretty close contest. Let's have a look at the scores. In 4th place, 18 points, David Buck. 3rd place, 23 points, Nick Smith. 2nd place, 24 points, Paul Jenkins. 1st place, 27 points, Alan Clark. Which means that Alan Clark is tonight's winner, and he goes through to the semi-finals, of course. Congratulations to him. If you would like to play an online version of Mastermind, or indeed be a contender on The Real Thing, the next series, do go to our website, bbc.co.uk/Mastermind. And do join us, please, next time for more Masterminds. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.